If you look closely at the official archives of human history, you will find a carefully curated narrative. A timeline that tells us we evolved linearly, rising from primitive hunter-gatherers to modern technological beings. But hidden within the uncatalogued, restricted basements of the world's oldest museums lies a collection of shattered cuneiform tablets that tells a radically different, and terrifying, story. Among these suppressed artifacts is a fragment known to a select few alternative epigraphers as the Absu-esh matrix. Discovered in the late 19th century near the ruins of ancient Eridu, humanity's oldest city, this obsidian black clay tablet does not record grain shipments, royal lineage, or praise to the temple priests. Instead, it serves as a highly classified medical log. A log of a rogue genetic operation. A final, desperate experiment conducted by the master engineer of the Anunnaki elite, Enki. For millennia, mainstream academia has dismissed these specific translations as mere mythological allegory. But when you cross-reference this forbidden text with modern microbiology, the allegory fades away, revealing an unmistakable blueprint for genetic modification. The tablet details a secret window of time, a brief period of chaos, just before the Supreme Anunnaki Council issued a total quarantine on Earth and ordered Enki's underground laboratories to be systematically dismantled by force. As a squad of giant, heavily armored Anunnaki vanguard soldiers stepped out of a dark military craft, carrying glowing plasma weapon staffs, heavy, metallic footsteps reset attention. According to the translation, our species was never intended to remain in its current state of limited perception. We were the Lulu Amalu, a baseline biological labor force engineered to endure the harsh conditions of the gold mines. Built with just enough intelligence to understand commands, but entirely blinded to the deeper frequencies of the cosmos. But Enki, the scientist who first mixed the clay of the earth with the divine blood of a sacrificed god, grew fascinated by his creation. He saw a spark in humanity that the rest of his kind despised. And in the dark, beneath the subterranean waters of the Absu, he decided to break the cosmic law. What exactly did Enki alter in those final, frantic hours before the heavy vanguard of his half-brother, Enlil, breached his laboratory? The text describes a precise modification to what the text calls the T'Chakalam, the physical seat of vision inside the human brain. Today, we know this exact biological component as the pineal gland. But Enki did not merely enlarge it. He uncoupled it from the linear prison of three-dimensional time. He rewrote the genetic code so that humans could perceive the invisible architecture of the universe, communicate without speech, and unlock an innate power that threatened the very survival of the Anunnaki hierarchy. When Enlil and the High Council discovered what was happening in the depths of the Absu, panic swept through the capital city of Nippur. With the shadow of Nippur's surveillance growing longer each day, Enki retreated into the absolute deepest tier of the Absu, a hypersterile sector known as the Key-Sickle. Here, he bypassed the standard incubation vats and selected 14 specific human specimens. These were not random workers pulled from the mines. They were chosen for their highly resilient cellular structures. The black tablet lists these 14 individuals by title, referring to them as the Nisabaash, the bearers of the new script. Enki's objective went far beyond simple mental enhancement. He sought to perform a complete bio-spiritual synthesis. In their normal state, the Anunnaki-engineered locks kept the human nervous system operating at a highly restricted voltage. Enki intended to flood these 14 conduits with the raw, unfiltered frequency of the me. To achieve this, the tablet describes a process that mirrors modern CRISPR gene editing with terrifying precision. Enki introduced what the cuneiform calls Imamani, the divine inoculation. This compound acted as a molecular scalpel, unzipping the artificial constraints on chromosome 2. The physiological reaction was instantaneous and violent. The subjects underwent a profound transfiguration. As the genetic locks dissolved, their internal body temperature spiked to critical levels. Their skin began to emit a faint, bioluminescent gold radiance, the manifestation of their DNA uncoiling. For 3 days, Enki stabilized his new creation. The results were beyond anything he anticipated. The 14 archetypes had ceased to be simple laborers. They had become the Ilmu, the knowers. They could communicate instantly through telepathic resonance, mapping thoughts in milliseconds. More terrifyingly for the establishment, they began to display a profound mastery over physical matter. They were a living proof of concept. Humanity did not need the gods to govern them. But as the 14 stood in the white light of the Abzu, an invisible gaze was already watching them from the shadows. The security of the Abzu was legendary, designed to withstand deep-sea pressures. Yet, Enki had underestimated the sheer paranoia of his brother Enlil. An Ijajai high commander named Nergalash had been secretly recruited by the intelligence apparatus of Nippur. For weeks, Nergalash utilized advanced probes to send real-time genetic telemetry to the high-altitude orbital station. When the encrypted files appeared on Enlil's command consoles, the reaction was absolute, cold terror. The Council did not see a breakthrough, they saw a bioweapon that could render their entire civilization obsolete. Enlil immediately summoned an emergency, closed-door session of the Great Anunnaki Assembly. The translated lines preserve his direct testimony, "Behold, the worker has broken the seal of the vessel. They walk without our light, they speak without our words, and they lift the stone without our hands. If the bloodline spreads beyond the Abzu, the temples will empty, and we shall be made ghosts upon our own world." The assembly was divided. But Enlil forced a vote, demanding the invocation of the absolute cleansing decree. The motion passed. Enki's project was condemned to immediate, merciless liquidation. Enlil deployed his personal elite unit, the Vanguard of Nippur, equipped with devastating thermokinetic weapons. Their orders were simple: launch a surprise tactical descent, breach the Abzu, and execute the prototypes. As the warships hit the water and began their rapid dive, the main power grid of the Abzu suddenly failed. Nergalash had executed his final directive, locking down Enki's defensive turrets. The facility's crimson emergency lights flared to life. Enki looked at his monitors and saw the Vanguard slicing through his upper blast doors. He had exactly 3.5 minutes left. The upper perimeter blast doors didn't just buckle, they completely liquefied. The Vanguard of Nippur moved with terrifying efficiency, using targeted plasma arcs to dissolve the foundations. Enki's automated security drones, paralyzed by Nergalash's lockout code, hung uselessly from the ceiling as the heavy enforcers advanced down the weeping stone corridors toward the central sanctuary. Inside the place of purity, the 14 Ilmu gathered around their creator. There was no panic in their eyes, no primal fear. Thanks to their uncoupled consciousness, they perceived the exact probability matrix. They knew that their physical vessels could not withstand the weaponry advancing toward them. "They are coming to reset the code," their leader communicated telepathically, his voice echoing cleanly. Enki realized he could not save their physical bodies. If he attempted to teleport them out, the orbital sensors of Enlil's station would track their energy signatures and atomize them instantly. He had to look beyond the immediate physical paradigm. He decided to execute a strategy they could never anticipate. He would dissolve the active, physical code and scatter its components across the collective human timeline. With less than 60 seconds before the final breach, Enki's fingers flew across the crystal consoles. He initiated a massive data dump, unzipping the active DNA strands of the 14 prototypes and shattering them into microscopic, recessive traits. He took the sublime frequencies of the me, the capabilities of telepathy, manifestation, and sight, and encrypted them using a biological cipher. He hid the keys to godhood inside the one place Enlil's enforcers would never think to look, the massive, unmapped genetic wilderness of our genome. He designated this as non-coding material, ensuring it would replicate silently across millions of generations without manifesting externally. It was a genetic time capsule. To the untrained eye of an Anunnaki auditor, the genome would look reset. But beneath that baseline, the master program would remain completely intact, protected by its own dormancy, waiting for a future era when the planetary network was clear to receive it. Just as the sequence hit 100% completion, the inner sanctuary walls gave way. The Vanguard of Nippur stormed the room, their weapons precharged to maximum thermal output. But as they stepped through the smoke, their sensors found no living prototypes to execute. They found only Enki, standing motionless before a completely wiped master console, surrounded by 14 empty stasis pods and the drifting, golden ash of his final experiment. Enki was arrested, stripped of his divine titles by the Supreme Assembly, and condemned to exile. Enlil, believing he had thoroughly contained the genetic contagion, ordered a global memory wipe. To guarantee that any unrecorded surface settlements were cleansed, the Council authorized a weaponized climate shift, the historical event recorded in global mythologies as the Great Deluge. But physical water could not drown a digital code written into the very blood of the survivors. The few humans who endured the cataclysm carried Enki's hidden fire inside their physical cells. For millennia, this 95% of our genome has passed down from parent to child, surviving empires and dark ages. Today, mainstream institutional science looks at this vast genetic landscape and lazily dismisses it as junk DNA, claiming it serves no functional biological purpose. But it isn't junk. It is an unread cosmic library. The black tablet concludes with an explicit operating manual, warning that this code is entirely reactive. It does not activate automatically through linear time, it triggers based on bioresonance. The text states that certain environmental frequencies, precise electromagnetic waves, ancient harmonic chants, can act as the decryption key. When the human nervous system is exposed to these resonance patterns, the calcification around the pineal gland begins to dissolve, and the junk data begins to unfold. This explains why the global establishment has maintained such an intense focus on managing the human sensory landscape. The final lines contain a chilling warning: the automated surveillance systems of the Council of the Heights remain operational. Whenever human consciousness approaches a critical threshold of mass resonance, global events are accelerated to disrupt our collective biological frequency, keeping our brains locked in a survival state that prevents the decryption process. But an archive hidden inside your own biology cannot be confiscated by an external power. Enki's final experiment was never a political victory of his era, it was a Trojan horse designed to sleep for thousands of years. Every time you experience a deep response to ancient frequencies, you are witnessing the sleeping code testing its boundaries. The software is waiting. The fire is still burning in the cold. Are you willing to step outside the frequencies of distraction and see what is truly encoded in your own DNA? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you feel the stirring of this hidden inheritance? If you are ready to venture deeper into the suppressed archives of our true origins, select the video on your screen right now to unlock the next chapter of the ancestral shadows. Subscribe, guard your frequency, and stay vigilant.